At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipson. Welcome to episode 186 of Sports Management Podcast. Today's guest is Brandon Tosti, a sports business and entertainment professional with almost 3 decades of experience. He's a charitable entrepreneur, speaker, professor, and a 2-time author. His latest book was just released and it's called Bright Lights and Long Nights. We spoke about his 2 books, Networking the Right Way, starting Sport for a Cause after Hurricane Katrina, living with ADD, and much more. Brandon Tosti, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Thanks, Marcus. I appreciate you having me on.
It's great to have you on the show. You're a sports and entertainment professional with almost 30 years of experience, and really looking forward to talking to you today. You're also an author. You recently released your book, Bright Lights and Long Nights. So let's start there. Why did you decide to write this book?
I think it was important for me to give back both to the mentors that helped me get to where I was, but also the next generation of sports management students. The career path for the sports industry, as you are well aware, it's not predictable. It's not a standardized path. Everyone gets there differently. And so for me, it was just really important to kind of provide realistic and authentic insights and feedback, right? And advice so that people would understand how they could break into the industry. And then once they establish themselves, how they could advance.
That's really interesting. And as you said there, I've talked to so many people on this podcast, and I don't think one story is the same. Everyone has their own way into this. Of course, people should buy the book and read more, but a little bit like if we can talk about your story, like how was your entrance into the sports industry?
Mine was a little bumpy, and that's also part of the reason why I felt compelled to take my thoughts and experiences and put them into a book. It took me almost 2 years to break into the industry. I started out during college. I was working at a local athletic retail store and then got an assistant manager job after I graduated. But that's not what I wanted to do long term. And so I just started sending out resumes and I was networking and I just couldn't catch a break. And then finally got a job with a company based in Baltimore, Maryland, but I was able to stay in Lexington, Kentucky, where I was currently living. And unfortunately, that job fell through and our funding was cut about a year after the job. And so here I thought, okay, I've made it. I'm in. Let's go. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, let's go backwards a couple steps again. And at that point, I decided to go back to graduate school and get my master's degree in sport management because I thought in my heart, I knew I wanted to be in sports the rest of my life. And I understood the chance that just because you have a master's degree doesn't guarantee anything. But I truly loved all the the promotion and the concepts behind game day operations and the marketing of teams and tickets. Just all that fascinated me, and so I was glad I was able to finish that at the University of Kentucky. And then I got an internship with a mom and pop event management company in Lakewood, Colorado, and it was Summit Sports and Events, and they focused on 3v3 soccer and 3-on-3 basketball. At the time, I think we did close to 140 events across the country. And it was just a great opportunity to learn, to grow. We had a lot of flexibility and ownership of our tournaments because each one of us had a different number of tournaments that we managed. But my role was sponsorship management and fulfillment. And so at the time we had Sunny Delight was our major sponsor. And then after that, it was Got Milk. So my job was to make sure they were, everything that was promised in a contract, we needed to make sure we delivered that. and exceeded their expectations. And for instance, we had this 20-foot inflatable got milk bottle that was always a difficult thing for our staff to implement sometimes. And because sometimes it was rain or wind, sometimes they forgot. But on Monday morning, I was the one that had to deal with that phone call of like, hey, why wasn't our inflatable up? We're supposed to have pictures of that. So that was my introduction into the world of sponsorship management.
Yeah, really exciting. So yeah, the got milk was a big one, right? At that point, like I think wasn't it like it was a campaign in order to get kids to drink more milk, and there was these commercials with like you have a dry mouth, and how can you drink got milk? That was a big thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, it was very popular. To your point, they had celebrities, they had athletes, the commercials in print, TV. We were a very small part of that. I think at the time, if I remember correctly, I want to say their ad budget at the time was, I don't know, I think it was over $70 million, and we were only 1.5 of that. But they treated us like we were VIPs, and that was an important piece of their business. And so that was good for me to understand. And they also had a full PR team. They had an activation agency that I got to work with. So that exposure to both the agency world of not just New York City, but across the country, like how do they produce a Got Milk event in 40 of our top markets? That's kind of what they focused on from the media side.
You're talking a lot about giving back, and that's why you wrote a book. That has been a continuing thing, I feel, in your career with the book and also, working with charities, and you talk a lot about networking. Why is that so important to you to give back to this industry?
I think it's a reminder to be humble and, again, an ode to the people before me. Not just necessarily the executives or the leaders, but everybody. It could have been a peer of mine who was an intern at the same time. Yes, sometimes it was a boss, obviously. And other times it was someone that might have been, again, in the executive role that I didn't deal with day to day, but he or she took the time to listen to my career goals or introduce me to one of their friends in their network. And to me, that's so important. Networking it's so powerful. It's a career skill that I think every college should teach because it gets lost in the shuffle and people think it's, oh, you're a people person and you like to talk. Oh, you're a good networker. And yes, that's part of it, but there's also, the authenticity piece of it, right? You want to make sure that you're helping others because it always comes back to you. You don't have to count favors and you don't have to be concerned about, well, if I help Marcus land this, podcast guest, then he's going to help me do this. It doesn't work like that. And so I've always tried to share that with anyone that works with me or for me, whether it's part-time, seasonal, intern, or full-time employee. It's just so important. And at the end of the day, we're all humans and we're all looking for that connection to, again, help someone else get ahead.
Yeah, because that's something that when I did the research that you had talked about networking done the right way. So that speaks to that, right? To have a purpose and to do it for the right reasons and not just for your own good.
Correct. And it just feels good. I mean, at the end of the day, when you see someone else land that internship or land that job, or even if they just get the interview and they make the final four of the interview process, you feel good that, by me simply sending an email or you making a phone call on their behalf, they're going to remember that, Marcus, and they're going to pass that on to someone else in their network. And sometimes it comes back to you. And again, you're not expecting it and you don't sit and just wait for it. It's just more about, helping other people. And also, going to the book part in, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but in 1997, 98, through that time frame, the sports career books were very, in my opinion, very simple and more about here's a description of what a media relations director does. And it was a paragraph. And then it would say, here's the National Association of Media and Broadcasters. And that's not necessarily a true organization. I mean, a real organization. But there was no in-depth advice to how do you go from being the college graduate to getting your foot in the door. And that's what I wanted to focus on, is making sure they understood that everyone arrives there differently, whether it is game entertainment or the media relations side or the administration or game ops, whatever the case may be. Everyone kind of catches a lucky break. And it's not always get your degree, apply for the job, and then you're into the sports world.
Yeah. So you mentioned the book there again, the name, Bright Lights and Long Nights. How did you come up with that and what does it mean?
Yeah. I think for me, a lot of my friends that didn't work in the industry always assumed that we were hanging out with the players after the game. We were going to parties. And that's further from the case, right? I mean, you might see one or two of the players um, at a charitable function or something of that nature, a public appearance, but you really don't, you don't really have that fellowship with the athletes. They're there to do a job, and you are as well. And when we're working in the sports industry, your friends are playing or enjoying themselves at the game, right? Entertaining. Entertaining clients. They're bringing their friends or their family, and that could be in the form of an adult recreational league where they're playing kickball on a Wednesday night, or it could be a National Hockey League game on a weekend. But you're there. Same with the holiday weekends. There for there for a period of time. I think I didn't have Memorial Day off for 7 or 8 years straight. But you know that going into it, and you kind of accept that you're going to have a different schedule than an accountant or an attorney or a banker, and you have to embrace that, and you really have to want that part of it, to be honest with you, because the industry will naturally weed you out if you're not committed and passionate to work hard.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that also many times maybe the sports jobs are not the highest paid ones. And as you said, like it's also that you work weekends and days off that other people have days off. So you really need to have this passion. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult, I feel.
Yes, absolutely. And the passion is a double-edged sword, ironically, because in your interview, the last thing you want to say is that you're a passionate sports fan, because the team needs people that are going to work and make objective decisions, sound business decisions. And you can't be worried about, oh, we're in a losing slump. My favorite player broke his ankle or got traded or things of that nature. All those things are part of the business. But at the end of the day, you have to produce the best game or the best tournament, and that has to be the focus. So you want to make sure when you're interviewing that you don't say you're a passionate fan. You can say you're a passionate about maybe the sport or working hard or helping others, whatever the case may be. But it's one of those first things you hear from anybody in the industry as far as an up and comer. If a student asks me, what's the one thing you don't say? That would be the one I would tell them.
I love that. I spoke to Andrew Brandt a while back from the former VP of Green Bay Packers, and he said the exact same thing. Like I asked for some tips during like the interview process, and he said that to say like I love sports, like that's basically the worst thing you can say.
Yeah,
So it's such a shame. But I think you need to have the passion, and maybe it doesn't need to be the passion for this the specific sport, but you need to have a passion to a drive. Maybe it's for that role or for for something that so to have the drive.
correct. Yeah, it's okay to have passion for, as I mentioned, the sport in general, but maybe you have to make sure you kind of give yourself that distance between the team or the one player, as I mentioned, your favorite players, whatever the case may be. You want to make sure that you have that space and that you're, again, making good decisions that help the organization on all fronts.
Definitely. So what can the readers and now the listeners, but we hope that they will also be readers of your book, what can they expect from this book?
I think it's a wide range of a little bit of career advice, some really funny stories, because this is behind the scenes, and that's what I wanted to accomplish, is to take the sports fan or the up and coming student, for the prospect, if you will, that this is what really happens, and the public doesn't see or hear a lot of that. Now with social media, that's changed a little bit. Obviously, you've got media clips here and there and sound bites and all that, but there's a ton of work that goes in to not just promoting one game, but 41 or 82, whatever the case may be. With hockey and the NBA, you've got an 82 game season, so you got 41 home games. That's a tremendous amount of work and cooperation and making sure that all these different departments are working together to be on target. When that moment comes and you don't hit play on the music piece and the crowd is sitting there wondering, where's the audio? That's one of those mistakes that, everyone knows what happened and you don't have to talk about it, but you want to make sure that it's as close to flawless as you can. I mean, you're always shooting for perfection, even though that's not always reality. You really want to try to make sure that you've covered all your bases and talked with everyone on the different teams to say, okay, we're in sync, we're ready to go, and we'll make sure we communicate that to you.
Awesome. We made this interview happen quite kind of quickly. So I ordered the book. I recently got it. So I haven't had time to read it yet, but I will, and I will write a review and let you know afterwards. But I'm really excited to start reading it.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. As I mentioned to you on LinkedIn, I'm an independent author, so I don't have a major PR firm behind me promoting the book. And so anything I do is often grassroots based. And it's usually me reaching out to people on LinkedIn blindly and asking for their support. Or sometimes I will send a complimentary copy and, to your point, ask for them to review it on Amazon or Goodreads or even LinkedIn. And I don't ask for a good review because that's not what the goal is. I want you to be honest because then your friends are going to see that you read the book and they trust you and you're providing, again, an open and honest feedback point of view.
Definitely. So this is actually your second book. So your first book was published in 2021, Who We Meet Along the Way. So how was that leap to become an author for the first time? And, why did you decide that? And what's the book about?
So that's a good story in itself. I had written on Facebook for over a decade, and I've always treated Facebook as kind of an open blog of sorts. And I tried to inspire people, make them laugh. I just felt like sometimes it just got sideways. But to me, it was a way for me to share what was going on in my life. And that book, Who We Meet Along the Way, covers everything from my wife's breast cancer battle to me coaching youth basketball for 15 years. Third and fourth grade kids are hilarious. And they say some funny things on the bench. They say some goofy things during practice. And I always felt like, this is kind of a little piece of the real world that everyone can appreciate. And I also wrote a section called the Lent Challenge. I'm Catholic, and growing up Catholic, you always joke about giving something up for Lent, whether that's potato chips or chocolate. A lot common when once you get to college, everyone joked about, cursing, right? Oh my gosh, I gotta stop cussing so much. And in that book, I focused on the Lent Challenge. And what I did was I decided to write about 40 different people. So one day I would write a post about a friend from high school. The next day would be college. The next could be a business mentor or someone else that I had a professional relationship with somewhere in my career. And at that point, I realized, okay, this is something I'm really excited about. And I had a few friends submit kind of comments on Facebook. Hey, you need to write a book, that you're a good storyteller, things of that nature. And I thought, okay, one of these days I'll get there. I was like, I have ADD. I've known that for a long time. And I've always wanted to write a book, even since I was a kid. And I just always told myself, I'll never make it happen. I'll never get there. And that changed because of my college roommate, Chad Randall. So he called me one Thanksgiving, and he's an electrical engineer. So he and I are totally different mindsets. I'm the creative person and he's the details guy. And he said, hey, it was Thanksgiving. I'll never forget. He said, I've got this idea. I think you should take your best Facebook posts and put them into a book and sell it. And I was like, are you crazy? It's been free for 10 years. No one's going to pay money to read something that's been free for a decade. And he said, well, I really think you should think about it. Just consider it. And I said, well, okay. And I thought for a moment, and my response was, I guess in some way it could be viewed as like a minor league version of Chicken Soup for the Soul, maybe. And he said, yeah. And he got excited. And he said, you know how many books that guy sold? So we had a good laugh and I hung up. And then a week or two later, another high school friend called me and we were talking about my Facebook post, ironically, and he was battling cancer at the time, but he hadn't told me this. And he said, when I see your name pop up on Facebook, I go grab a bourbon and it's like a fireside chat. You're a great storyteller and you put the person and the reader in that spot, in that moment, even though they might not have grown up in a small town like we did. And he said, we're not getting any younger. You need to write a damn book. And then he signed off. And I was like, okay, that's two friends from two different parts of my world that do not know each other. And I called Chad back and I said, let's give it a whirl. Why not? Let's go have some fun with it. And so once I finished Who We Meet Along the Way, I was excited and eager to write something else. And initially, I wanted to write a book about national governing bodies with, USA Swimming or USA Track and Field, and again, explore the front office. Um, there's so many students that are trying to find jobs in sports. And to me, it was fascinating that someone could work in, archery or gymnastics. And why was that their chosen sport, right? Why did they go down that path and how did they get there? So I started down that path, and a friend of mine was the CEO of USA Swimming, and he was kind enough to introduce me to a couple people on his staff. And I wanted to interview people from intern level up to, CEO or senior vice president of development fundraising. So it was fascinating to me to think some of these national governing bodies have a $25,000 budget and one paid employee with, 10 volunteers, whereas others have an $80 million budget with 30 people full time. And it's, I don't want to say it's more popular. That's not fair, but it gets more visibility. And I started down that path with that book, and it was just really hard to kind of catch people and interview that many people. So I thought, all right, this one I'm going to come back to. And I kind of put that one on pause, and then I thought, what else can I write about that I'm passionate about, but that I also know and I understand something well? And that's when I realized that my path in the sports industry has been very, unpredictable, a little bumpy, but I've always had a lot of fun. I mean, I've been blessed with some great opportunities, and I thought, that's it. That's what I'm going to write about. And so I sat down and made a list of people. Again, each job that each career stop, and then I wrote down a list of people, and I tried to focus on coworkers who I had some type of professional relationship or rapport with versus, well, me and Marcus, we work in the same building, because then for the reader, there's no storyline there. There's no attachment. So I went through every department that I could, and I thought, ticket sales. I've got the Zamboni driver is in the book, in my second book. I've got a mascot. Again, those stories, and they're people too, just like us, but they might not be seen in the public, or people might not understand the number of hours and the amount of pride they have in their position and their job to, again, entertain the fans or make sure the ice is absolutely perfect for the team.
Yeah, definitely. So I work in hockey, so I get to see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. And when you talk to like for example, equipment managers, like you would be amazed of like how much they do that you don't see. Like if you're just a fan of the game and you just watch the game, but like they are there first, they leave last, they take care of everyone's equipment, they're washing, they're also purchasing, like if they need anything from the material on the equipment, but maybe they need washing powder, they need whatever tape, they need and as you said, the Zamboni driver, there's so many interesting stories from behind the scene that doesn't get told every day. So great that you shine some light on those.
Yeah, and it gave me a good reason to reconnect with old friends. I mean, there were people I haven't talked to since, as I mentioned, the athletic retail store. That was 20 some years ago. And, for me to reconnect with those friends and talk about some of the stories and bring those to life, I just think we all enjoy a good story. And a lot of these from the book are, they're serious in nature, but there's definitely a couple funny ones that will catch you off guard. And then there's some lighthearted ones and some inspirational ones. I never try to make someone cry. I know sometimes on my Facebook posts, I'll get an email and say, oh my gosh, I've got tears of joy running down my face. And it's like, well, I'm not trying to make you cry. I'm trying to make you understand that life is precious, and that I appreciate whatever I was writing about that day. And so that's kind of my goal.
Yeah. Something else that you've been up to in your career is your charitable entrepreneurships, so sports for a cause, an all-volunteer non-profit to help schools and rec centers. Can you talk a little bit about how this came about and those years that you were working on that?
Yeah, I read Sports Illustrated since I was, 9 or 10 years old. It was my favorite weekly magazine. And 2 years after Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, I was reading an article by Alexander Wolf about the impact of the storm 2 years later. And the article just really struck a chord with me that, the photos showing a basketball court at a high school with the glass, shards of glass were all over the court. The football field had dilapidated blocking dummies. The grass was overgrown. There was debris at different spots. And I just couldn't imagine that. How had that not been cleaned up? I mean, it's been 2 years, Marcus, and I knew there were volunteer groups going down there, and I knew they had some help. And I'm an idea guy at heart, and I just had this notion that, well, what if I created something like a volunteer project? And at first, I thought, with all the sports people, whether it's the front office, again, the college interns from the summers, what if we all came together and just gave up 3 or 4 days of our vacation time, and we went down to New Orleans, and we painted a school building, or we rebuilt a slide at a playground, just did something to help them get back on their feet. And so I reached out to one of my mentors, Rick Hatcher, and he put me in touch with Jay Cicero at the Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation. And then I called the school district, and I took a reconnaissance trip in December, and just so I could see everything with my own eyes and understand the severity of it. And that weekend was, it was gut wrenching, because I got to see the different wards. The lower ninth ward was a lot of the attention, obviously, was focused on that area because it was the hardest hit. And I got to see the people and hear stories and understand how it impacted them. A lot of people would, focus on, well, those houses were in a bad area, or they were run down, and you didn't realize that those people owned those houses, and so they didn't have anywhere else to go. And it was eye-opening for a variety of reasons for me. And at that point, once I came back, Troy Peliquin was the volunteer coordinator of the school district, and he refused for me to get a rental car. He would barely let me buy my lunch. And their generosity, the city, and the support, I was like, I will do anything I can to help you out. So I came back and kind of, again, launched the volunteer plan at first, and then quickly realized, well, this is only going to work for so long, and we're really not going to have that much of an impact. And I thought, what if we actually create a 501c3, and we can raise money, and we can actually have a significant impact? And a friend of mine, for my birthday, it's in April, I did a sports equipment drive at the local Dick's Sporting Goods store. And a lady that I didn't know walks up to me and gives me a $500 check. And I said, ma'am, thank you so much, but I'm not a registered 501c3. I can't take this. And she said, well, I'm going to walk over to the register and buy $500 worth of gear and put it in the shopping cart. I said, great. But what I didn't know was she was the niece of one of my administrators at the University of Kentucky during grad school. And so he had emailed her and said, hey, you need to stop by and drop off $25 of soccer balls or basketballs, whatever, to one of my, this kid that used to work for me. And so lo and behold, she actually worked for a law firm in Denver, and they did a lot of pro bono work. And so they were able to help me get everything organized legally, and we were a nonprofit 6 months later. And that entire experience, Marcus, it literally changed my life. We led 7 volunteer trips to New Orleans. We rebuilt playgrounds. As I mentioned, we did landscaping. We painted schools. We did a lot of small projects, but just to see the smile on those people's faces and their grit, their resilience, they always told me that they weren't concerned with politics. And Mac McClendon, rest his soul, was one of the leaders of the lower ninth ward. He created the Village, and it was kind of like a YMCA without the name on the building. And he created another program of Where's Your Neighbor, where he was trying to bring the elderly back to the lower ninth ward. And he told me, he said, Brandon, if we sit here and gripe about Democrats and Republicans and FEMA and lack of response or this or that, no one's going to help us. We don't have time for that. And at that moment, Marcus, that's when I realized, okay, these people care. They're not sitting around feeling sorry for themselves. They're doing everything they can. I mean, they're launching again. Mac created it was kind of a high school kid lawn mowing program where he would have the kids go around to the elderly neighbors and cut their grass for them for free, just to get them back on their feet. Just that little piece where they felt like, oh, my house looks good again, even though the inside might needed major reconstruction. So again, the people of New Orleans, every time we went down there, they would help us with, discounted hotel rooms or again, pick us up at the airport. And I think that generosity, it really restored my faith in humanity because they lost everything. I mean, literally, you could talk to some people and they would say, Brandon, it's hard for you to imagine, but think about walking into your house and basically view it as like a washing machine of mud and debris. And that's what it felt like, that it was just taken, shaken upside down, turned around, and then all your contents were on the floor in a foot of mud. So it really just broke my heart. But I thought, there's a lot of good people in sports and we all have contacts, right? We have contacts, we have equipment. And so then I realized that all the game promotions, sometimes, you have a couple leftover water bottles or a player gets traded. Well, sometimes that stuff just gets thrown away. Sometimes you forget about it and it's in a closet down the hallway. And next thing you know, you've got, there's 50 basketballs with a corporate logo on there from a promotion we did 2 years ago. Well, as well as I do, Marcus, if you're a 12-year-old kid in New Orleans and you just lost everything, you don't care what logo is on that basketball. You don't care that water bottle has a player that was just traded. So I've gone to, when I worked for Kroenke Sports, I went to the Denver Nuggets, my teammates, and Allen Iverson, I think, was traded at the time. And I said, what are you going to do with those? I don't know. I think it was like 1,000 water bottles. And they're like, well, we don't know. And I said, well, can I take the label off? So it's just a plain water bottle. And we did that and we distributed them. So again, I also focused on the opportunity, right? Because I don't want to call it waste. That's not the right word. But you just kind of are doing so many different things, and jerseys get discontinued, scoreboards get bought and sold and upcycled sometimes. So anything that was what another team might consider old or outdated, I would try to get our hands on that because someone in New Orleans could use that.
That's fantastic. And as you said, like I can't imagine what those people went through. And now more recently, we had the horrific fires in Los Angeles and, same, tragedy for these people losing their houses and some people passing away as well, I think. So great. It speaks a lot about yourself that you see, like you try to help out in these situations and that someone that you knew from, your from school, that they helped out. So you must have left a mark there for them to, wanting to help you out. If you would have been someone that they couldn't stand in school, they probably wouldn't have gone that extra mile to help you out. So I think it speaks highly about you as well.
I had a lot of help. It wasn't me. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, well, you did this. And it's like, well, there's a we there. I mean, there was a lot of my family, like you said, my friends, high school, college, people in Denver. They donated money, donated time. And again, it just shows you that there's still good people in the world. And I just was always amazed by just the resilience of the people of New Orleans, of how they rebuilt that city, literally one playground at a time. I think at the time when I first went down to the city, I want to say there was 132 playgrounds that were destroyed. And within, I think it took 6 years, the city, between all the volunteers, all the corporations that come down for conventions and other sports teams, leagues, tournaments, things of that nature, they were lucky and they were able to rebuild all 132 playgrounds, which is a testament again to the city and all the people, the teachers, the coaches on the ground. That was a monumental effort, as you can imagine.
Yeah, definitely. I want to touch on something you mentioned before. You mentioned you had ADD. And if it's not too personal to speak about that, but my very limited knowledge, it's ADHD without the hyperactivity, right? The ADD. So a lot of people with ADHD say that that's their superpower. Like if they can really focus on something that they enjoy, then they put like a lot of more focus on that. And, you know, a lot of athletes, a lot of people in business, executive positions have that. So how has it been for you with ADD? Would you say that that's something that you have leveraged into a superpower, or has it, you know, hindered you in some way, or how has that affected you?
It's a combination, I would say, and I have a little bit of the hyperactivity, and I'm glad you point out the difference. I think for me, my ability to create something is my superpower, but also kind of implement that idea. Whereas sometimes you always hear people say, "Oh, that's an idea guy or an idea girl," and that's all they're good for. They can just come with the idea and then they walk away. And I think I have the special ability to actually take the idea, formulate the plan, and then execute that plan. Where I struggle is with the simple decision making tasks. That's just the way that my brain works. A good buddy of mine, Matt Tabram, when we were working at the city of Denver, at Denver Arts and Venues, you know, he would start texting me at 9:30 in the morning. Where are we going to lunch, Tosti? What do you want for lunch today? And so those little simple things, Marcus, that's where I struggle with my brain, and not so much the complex things. And I don't really fear failure. I think a lot of people do, but the ADD or ADHD mind kind of embraces the roller coaster. You know, you're chasing something. And so building a nonprofit from scratch was monumental and made zero rational sense because I lived in Denver. Why, you know, how am I going to raise money and take it to a state, you know, 1,500 miles away? That doesn't make sense, but I didn't care. And to your point, I've told this to many people. If I had been 24, 25 years old and single, there is no doubt in my mind I would have quit my job and moved to New Orleans and figured out a way to run sports for a cause full time. That's how excited and passionate I was, that there was no, I don't want to say blind spots, but for me, I didn't care that a local executive here in Denver told me, yeah, that's admirable, but you're never going to get the sports teams to back you. I said, great, that's your opinion. I'm going to go do it anyway. So it's hard. Sometimes the mundane tasks are where I struggle, or maintaining that focus. For instance, another boss of mine used to joke and say, if I told you to go sell that sign and say, here it is, it's a rectangle, it's 10 feet by 10 feet, you're not going to be able to do that. And I said, yeah, you're correct. He said, but if I ask you to create a marketing plan and an event around it with 3 other things, you're going to be able to do that. And I think people don't realize the struggle people have, because you're always questioning yourself and wondering, like, okay, am I talking too fast? Am I talking too much? And another good friend of mine often said, you know, you operate at a higher level. And he's not saying that like in a cocky sense, but he said your brain and your heart are just in a different place than we are. And he said sometimes you have to like slow down and kind of come down to our level. And he said, I can tell that frustrates you, and you get down on yourself because you're like, well, we should be doing this, or why aren't we moving faster? Like, yes, we can move with strategic purpose, but sitting around drives me crazy. I mean, it always has. And so for me, again, I like the chase. I like building something. And so that's where it is it's a positive. But the negatives, obviously, again, it's tough to stay focused on the little stuff. It doesn't excite me. But I've learned with my career, it's one of the things I've always said in an interview. And I didn't catch this until I was 33 years old. But if you want to hire me and then put me in the proverbial box and say, operate within this parameter and don't go outside that box, you're wasting your time, and I am too. And I don't say that in a cocky sense or an arrogant tone. I say that in understanding my strengths, my capabilities, and my personality. So that characteristic is, I like to build things, whether it's relationships, whether it's programs or events, and I need that room to create. And if you're not letting me be creative, then it's not right for me either. And that's usually the first thing I lead with when a prospective employer asks me, like, what's your questions for us? And I say I've got to be able to create, otherwise it's probably not the right fit, and I'm okay with that. And I don't want to be disrespectful.
Yeah. No, I think this is really interesting. And why I asked you in the first place is also what we talked about earlier, that everyone's journey is different. And I feel like I don't want someone to, because it's easy to label someone, okay, you have ADD, so then you are this, and then you cannot do this. But to show that, whatever you have, that you're able to still have a great career in sports, you can do whatever you want. But then it's like building a sports team, right? Like you said that you're very creative, you're living outside of the box. If you have a hockey, if you have a power forward who likes to score a lot of goals, and then you just put him in defense, in penalty killing, then that's not going to get any potential out of this guy. So the same with you, like you have your skill set, how can we maximize that? And that's when you can be creative and have some room. And obviously it's, paid off to have a career almost 30 years in sports.
Yeah. And it does take all types of personalities and people, backgrounds, strengths, I should say plural. But yeah, there's days where I joked with my wife when I first kind of got on the ADD medication, and it was like everything just slowed down, Marcus. So some people often say, well, ADD is not attention deficit disorder. It's you have overdrive in attention. You're trying to pay attention to too many things, which is very, very accurate. And so again, when I started the medication, it was like everything quieted down around me. And I literally looked at my wife and I said, is this how the rest of the world lives? And she kind of, giggled, and she's like, oh, but everybody has moments like, where they're not focused. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I can actually hear you, and I can, see you. I'm not worried about the 5 other things going on in the background or things that I can't focus. And when I did my testing, I'll give you an example. The doctor was like, okay, here's one of the test modules. And the task was to repeat a series of numbers. So it starts out real simple, right? Okay, Marcus, 7, 22, 42. Repeat those back, right? And you would repeat them back, no problem. Well, I did that. The first couple were fine. And then once we got to, 4, maybe 5, 6 numbers, I physically could not do it. I said, oh my gosh, doctor, that's it. I mean, I could sense it. I could feel it for the first time in my life of identifying. It was like someone put a piece of paper in front of my brain. I could not remember that number. I couldn't process it. I couldn't hear it. I couldn't remember it. And so, again, just the way everybody's brain works differently. And that was when I realized that, wow, this is my brain is definitely different. And I understand why I'm here. And then I'm owning this. I ran from it for a long time. And I need to own it to be better for my family, for my kids, and my friends. I mean, I think I wrote a Facebook post about it and apologized. I was like, hey, if I've ever cut you off in a conversation, not saying it's okay, not justifying it, but here's probably why I did that. If I forgot to do something when you said, hey, go check this, and I go out and I do 5 other things, and you come back and you're like, where's the pizza? Well, I trimmed the trees out front and took your dog for a walk and changed the tires on your neighbor's car. Yeah, but we just were supposed to get pizza, Tosti. Where are you at? Oh, that's right. So it is a blessing and a curse.
I understand that. But as you said, you have leveraged it in a great way. We have kind of been on this road, but has there been any bumps on the road in your career? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Oh, yeah. I think the big one there is, losing your job. I've been laid off 3 times. And I don't want to say that it's expected in sports, but it kind of is, whether it's financial implications or new ownership comes in and changes everything. But once you go through it, the first time it just shocks you, regardless of what industry you're in. You're scared to death and you're questioning your self-worth and what did I do wrong? And the second time it happens, you're like, well, it kind of empowers you almost. You're like, okay, I've been through this. I'm going to make it. I'll be fine. I know what to do. And then, you just start working on your mental health and you work out, you get outside the house, you start networking, going to coffee, having, a drink with a friend, whatever, say, hey, I'm looking for a job. And you kind of own it in a positive way. because you did nothing wrong and there's no reason to be embarrassed. So I think that's another part that I included in the book. It's so important to remember that you got to keep moving, and it might not happen within a month. It might not happen within 3 months, but keep your focus, keep your confidence, maintain that energy level, and just keep reaching out to people and asking for help on the networking side. Um, but yeah, I mean, and usually when you have that bump in the road, sometimes you get directed to something not necessarily better, but a soft landing spot, right? Something good happens, or you get picked up, or someone says, "Oh my gosh, you're available now. You're a free agent. Yes, come work for us." And so again, and it's all part of my story. I can't run from that, and I don't hide from that. Another portion of the book was when I worked for the Metro Denver Sports Commission. It was a 2-man office, and I didn't see eye to eye with my supervisor on many things, and I was always professional, and I think he was for the most part as well. But there came a point in time where he said, "Hey, you're not the right fit, and I'm making the executive decision to let you go." I said, "Okay," and I was again shell shocked, right? Because I hadn't stolen money, I hadn't done anything illegal, hadn't done anything wrong. It was just a personality difference, and I said, "Okay," and it kind of set me back, as you can imagine, for a little bit there. But it also pushed me to go start my own sports sponsorship consulting company, which I learned a tremendous amount that 9-month period of time. I wasn't super successful. I didn't go, sell in millions of dollars of sponsorship, but I learned life lessons, and I also learned business lessons that I've shared with other entrepreneurs. And I've also looked back on that and realized that there were certain things within that time frame where I learned how to balance time a little bit better, because I was the HR manager, I was the accountant, and I was also the business development guy. And you realize you can't do all that, and you have to pick an area to focus on when you're a solo entrepreneur. So I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. It also made me stronger. I don't fear getting let go. I don't fear a bad boss. I don't fear, I don't, it's not bad boss is not the right word, but challenging boss, if you will. So everything does happen for a reason. I know that's a cliche, but it's so true. And, he and I are cordial. We don't keep in touch personally, but at the same time, when we see each other in the past at conferences, give each other a handshake. How's it going? And if you need anything, great, give me a call. I mean, it's very cordial, because you don't want to burn bridges. It's just not worth it. It never is. And that one is in the book. I talk about that extensively, where I went to the founder of the sports commission, asked for an exit interview, and expressed to him very, in a professional tone and a respectful tone, that I was frustrated and I didn't understand why. And, to this day, he has been someone I can go to as a mentor, and he respected me because I didn't raise all this, ruckus and cuss at him and be disrespectful to him. Even though he did say, "Hey, I've given that manager the responsibility and the flexibility to run the HR part, and I don't want to get involved, and I have to keep my word." And so if I hadn't handled that in that tone, I don't think he would be on my side to this day. So that's an important lesson for the younger group, to remember that when you're leaving the job, try to leave, as good terms as you can.
Is there anything else I haven't asked you yet that you would like to mention?
Let's try to think. No, I think we've talked about a lot of things and a lot of topics, and I'm glad you touched on the ADD. I think that's something that, my name's not in lights anywhere on Broadway, but I'm definitely an advocate for people with ADD and ADHD, and even dyslexia. I mean, that's kind of been something that has entered my life, with on a personal level. And so you just realize that we just have to help each other out, and that's important. But also, again, don't run from it, because you can't change it. And don't get me wrong, it's frustrating. And there's times where I'm like, gosh, I wish I was just like everybody else. But then I'm thinking, yeah, but if that was it, then I wouldn't be Tosti, right? I wouldn't be me, the high energy entrepreneur, creative guy. I'd be something else. And so it's just important to, be yourself, lean into that, to your authentic self. And then people, some people are going to like you, some people aren't. You can't control that. And I don't waste time with that. I think a lot of people will tell you that I don't want you to hate me. I can't control that, but I'm not going to waste time if someone doesn't like my style or like me or whatever it is. It's like, hey, I'm being honest with you. I'm being open. I'm being fair. I'll treat you with respect, and then hopefully you'll do the same for me. And if not, then we agree to disagree and you move on. So
Definitely. I think that's a healthy mindset. I like you. Had a great 1 hour here with you. I can't wait to read your book. So thank you so much, Brandon, for taking the time to jump on Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you, Marcus. As I mentioned to you with our LinkedIn messages, I've followed you on the platform, and I know you have a great following, and it's just important for me to say that I appreciate that, because you could have easily said, you're not big enough, you don't have a big enough reach or a great enough story. And so for you helping out, as I said, an independent author like me means a lot. And so if I can return the favor, I would be glad to do that and help spread the word about your podcast.
I appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.